welcome to the latest installment of My Dad Listens to This. I'm Juliet the daughter.
And I'm Kevin the dad.
And this week we are covering Big World by Joe Jackson. So Dad, what do we need to know?
We need to know that David Ian Jackson was born August 11th, 1954 in Burton-upon-Trent, Staffordshire, England.
Fancy.
Quite. He grew up in Portsmouth and then Gosport when his parents moved there when David was a teenager. He learned to play violin but switched to piano. He got his father to install a piano in the hall of their council house, and he started playing piano in bars when he was 16 and won a scholarship to study musical composition at London's Royal Academy of Music. He's listed as an alum on Wikipedia's Alumni of the Royal Academy of Music page, but it just doesn't say what year he graduated, though.
Oh.
The first band he was in was called Edward Bear, later renamed Arms and Legs, which has got to be one of the worst band names ever.
Yeah, that's anyway, a bad name.
Because there had already been a Canadian band with the name Edward Bear, and they'd had a hit with Last Song, and then broke up in 1974.
Oh, love that.
But they sort of still live on, as their song Close Your Eyes is used as the signing off song for Delilah's radio show.
Oh, okay. I haven't listened to that in years.
I guess she's still around.
I gotta see if I can find that somewhere on the internet.
Anyway, David had picked up the nickname Joe as he bore a resemblance to the British TV puppet show character Joe 90.
Okay, I gotta look this
up
now.
Which I looked up and I can kind of see the resemblance. Anyway, Jackson legally changed his name to Joe when he was 20. Arms and Legs broke up in 1976 after 2 unsuccessful singles.
Oh God, the Arms and Legs broke.
I know. And they never healed. Joe spent time on the cabaret circuit to make money to record a demo. In 1978, producer Dave Kirschenbaum heard the demo and signed Joe and his band to A&M Records. At the time, his band consisted of Graham Mabey on bass, who's played on almost every single one of Joe's albums. Almost. Gary Sanford on guitar and David Horton on drums. Their debut album, Look Sharp, came out in January 29, 1979. It contained the song he probably will always be known for, Is She Really Going Out With Him? It went to number 21 on Billboard's Hot 100 chart, while the album went to number 20. It's considered one of the best debut albums ever, and yeah, it is. But that's another podcast for another time. Joe was classified as one of England's angry young men of the new wave. The other two were Graham Parker and your buddy
Elvis Costello?
Yes.
Yeah, I knew it.
But guess what? The press thought Joe was the angriest of the three.
Well, yeah, I can hear that.
Which he definitely was. The follow-up album, I'm the Man, came out also in 1979 in October. And it's kind of looked at as like Look Sharp, the sequel.
Mm-hmm.
And like all sequels, it's good. It's not great, but it's still pretty good. It's pretty solid. Then came the third album, Beat Crazy. A bright, happy cover disguised one of the angriest albums ever. It's just no fun. It's a great album, but do not put it on if you want something happy.
Gotcha.
But look at the album cover, though. That'll really perk you up. The band got more into the reggae they'd been fiddling with on the first 2 albums. It didn't do that well sales-wise in the U.S. as Joe and the band did not tour to support the album there.
Oh.
The band broke up at the end of 1980 when David Horton left the band. He was tired of touring and of the fame. But the band would reunite in 2004 with the album Volume 4, which is solid. It's a good album. But there's some additions that come with a second disc, which is live, and it's just killer. Oh, it's great stuff. Now Joe was at the point where every album was a different musical style. Joe Jackson's Jump and Jive was swing and blues. Night and Day, his most successful album, and Mike Smurther was salsa influenced. There were no guitars.
Cool.
Body and Soul was influenced by salsa, jazz, and pop standards. Willpower was part classical, part jazz.
Cool.
The man just follows his muse. His most recent album is 2023's Mr. Joe Jackson presents Max Campion in What a Racket. Now, Max is a fictional musical hall performer, and the album consists of 11 songs performed by Joe in a 12-piece orchestra.
Cool.
Joe Jackson has been eligible for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame since 2004.
I think he should get in. Or, well,
I-
if he's doing a variety of stuff.
Well, I don't think he will because he's too diverse, which
they don't like over there.
yeah, and too British these days.
Oh, well, maybe we should just have a music hall of fame like they do in Canada.
Yeah,
Get everybody in there.
Yeah. Anyway, as for me, I heard Is She Really Going Out with him on the radio, probably 92 Pro FM, believe it or not. In my Camp Stone Tower days, if that song came on while we were all on the bus, there'd always be a call and response with the lines, "Look over there." "Where?" "There." There's a lady that I used to know. Eventually, I picked up Look Sharp, the vinyl, sometime in the 80s. Not exactly sure. Also in the 80s, Joe's music was heard more on WBRU than any place else because he was getting more, I don't want to say obscure.
Eclectic?
Non-top 40? Yeah, eclectic too. Except when Night and Day came out because Stepping Out and Breaking Us in Two, you just heard everywhere. And I have his first 8 albums either on vinyl, CD, MP3, or all 3. Now, as for Big World, it was released March 24th, 1986 as a 2-record set. However, there's only music on 3 of the 4 sides. Side 4 states there is no music on this side and has this big-ass groove that lasts for 30 seconds, and it's complete silence. Now, the thing was, this was Joe Jackson's first album to be released on CD, and he said he had a hard time as to what songs he should leave off the vinyl. So he suggested to A&M, hey, let's make it a 3-sided album and sell it for the price of a single album. And much to his surprise, A&M said yes.
Wow.
Yep. Now, here's the thing. Big World, if you didn't know this already, is a live album.
Yes, I did know that.
It was recorded in 4 days from January 22nd to the 25th in 1986. Now, the very last song on the album, Man in the Street, was recorded in rehearsals on January 22nd, and the rest of the album was recorded the other 3 nights in front of an audience at New York City's Roundabout Theatre. Now, Joe asked the audience to be as quiet as possible.
That's hard to ask an audience to do.
And to hold applause until each song was absolutely finished. He felt having an audience made the performances more spontaneous and committed. And guess what? The audience actually behaved because we had so much class in the 80s, I guess.
Yeah, sure, okay.
Well, plus it was all new material, so the audience was being exposed to stuff they had never heard before. Okay, Big World's album cover is a cartoon of Joe running to catch a plane, I think, because you kind of see one flying by and he's not going to make it.
Yeah.
The album title itself is in 16 different languages on the front cover and 11 more on the back. Polish is one, but not Portuguese. Thanks, Joe. Also, the lyrics in the booklet of the vinyl version are in 6 languages, and also the credits as well. So we get English, German, Japanese, French, Italian, and Spanish. Now, in the CD booklet, only the Japanese translation was left off. I guess because the booklet would just have been ridiculously huge.
No room, yeah.
It's big enough as it is. 2 singles were released, Right and Wrong and Hometown. And Right and Wrong I heard on the radio, but I never heard Hometown. Now, Big World itself charted to respectable number 34 on Billboard's 200 Albums chart. And it's also the last of his albums that I own, as I said before. I have the 2-record, 3-sides music vinyl version, which I probably got from Good Vibrations and Seekonk, which I think is...
Gone?
Yeah, oh, it's definitely gone. I think it's like Payless Shoes now or
Yay.
something.
Well, Payless Shoes doesn't exist anymore, I don't think, either.
Oh, really?
I'm not sure, yeah.
Okay. I don't know what it is then. It might be GameStop. I don't know. Anyway, I also have the CD version, which is from West Germany because, yep, back then there was the Berlin Wall because it was 1986, and I'm not exactly sure where I got that copy. Maybe Newberry Comics. I don't know. So, let's dive in.
Oh, yes, let's. First track, Wild West. Now, you might think a British guy writing a Western, what does he know? Well, old Hollywood Westerns permeated the worldwide cultural zeitgeist when they came out, especially when Italian filmmakers added to the genre with their spaghetti Westerns.
Oh, yeah.
And it starts out like a ballad you'd hear play over the opening credits of one of those films, with a flute solo that's a riff on the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then Joe sings about the common plot points. A strange, distant land out west where you're trying to work hard and go about your day when something happens that makes you pull out your gun when you're really just hoping to collect your money at the end of the day and go home. Then the second half of the song enters rock and roll territory with the addition of electric guitar and drums. If you're a fan of westerns, add this song to your Spotify.
Hmm. Yeah, this is all in second person, so it's all happening to you as you head off west, and there's a trail that leads somewhere, which I think is probably the Oregon Trail, which ran from Missouri to, guess what, Oregon. There's a call of the wild that takes some people there. And starting out from New Amsterdam, which was New York's old name, to California Sun, towns in the Transcontinental Railroad are being built, and like you said, things get crazy, and you have to use a gun, and you wonder if this was the way the West was won. But if you keep thinking that way, you're not just going to get anywhere. And darn it, you've got a right to get where you're going to, because guess what? Manifest is your destiny.
Sure, pal.
But then I look at the rest of the song as kind of a leap forward to the present day. The West has been won, and now there's strangers further away from town. And you give them tools, and they know who's boss. Where are they coming from? And they're breaking their backs for opportunity. So, yeah. But the thing is, there's still beauty in the desert blooms and hope as the sun rises over the Rio Grande, but you hear guns in the night. Could they be for you? Are the peasants, sire, the peasants are revolting.
You said it, they stink on ice.
Yeah, so are you doomed? But again, Joe sings, if you keep thinking that way, you're just not going to get anywhere, because you gotta walk tall in the Wild West. And yeah, the song starts off with a strumming guitar, and I don't know if that was a recorder or a melodica. Like you said, probably a flute.
I thought it was a flute.
I'll go for that. Quoting the theme from The Good and the Bad and the Ugly. And it does show up a few more times during the song. And the band kicks in a little after the 90-second mark of the song, and they just come charging out. Because it's almost like we're charging out, there's the West, and we're taking over, and that's it. And then the way the song ends, as it began with just that strumming guitar. Nice opening to this set.
Next track, Right and Wrong. To give you an idea of how my brain works, when I heard that cowbell, the first thing I thought was Joe Jackson and Talking Heads would have been interesting.
I could see that.
XTC would have been cool too. This song aged a little too well. The best lyric is calling the president the Pied Piper of TV, which was very interesting to listen to, as the night before listening to that song, I was watching a Gore Vidal interview where he talked about his distaste for lying in politics. Also, as someone who was not alive during the Reagan presidency, I did not know that he would actually use cartoons when justifying projects that would come at the expense of the American people. The closest thing I can think of from my generation is when Trump got that map of the hurricane and drew on it with a Sharpie. I believe that was concerning Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. What I find interesting is that Jackson chose to write a protest song about Reagan and not Thatcher, but when it comes to charismatic politicians on TV, Reagan comes to mind. Again, being an actor, he knew how to perform for the camera, and I really like this song, because it shows how the issues of the day can be reduced to the same casualness as when we talk about, so who do you favor this year, the Yankees or the Mets? Only it's, so who do you support, the capitalists or the commies? Just don't throw that word ideology around or people will shut down. It reminds me of another quote, which to paraphrase said that ideology was for people who can't think for themselves. Great song for me as a left-leaning poli-sci major.
Yeah, and of course the president who was the Pied Piper of the TV screen at that time was Reagan, because it was 1986.
Yep.
Joe had heard Reagan give a speech about supporting the Contras in Nicaragua, and Ron had said, it's not a question of right or left, but right and wrong. Now, in February of 86, he asked Congress for $100 million to support the Contras, and Congress had banned U.S. support, but the Reagan administration covertly continued it. Thus, the
Iran-Contra affair.
Which in a nutshell was, sell arms to Iran and use the proceeds to fund the Contras. To quote Joe, this is the kind of thing that I get angry about. And when I get angry about something, it's going to come out in my work. And it really does. Musically, it's sparse and angry, but it's also funky, and yes, you do get cowbell. And it was a hit. Number 11 on Billboard's Album Rock Tracks chart.
And Casey Kasem.
Yes, thank you.
Next track, It's a Big World.
Is it?
I think it's safe to say that musically this song is inspired by the music of East Asia. Joe's writing for the perspective of the tourist who knows they're out of their depth, but they find it all exciting. If Anthony Bourdain's Parts Unknown had a theme song, this should have been it. And I bet Joe felt this way at first when he started touring. But it's a big world, and he wants to see the sights with his travel companion and eat all the food the world has to offer. The opening also sounds like him trying to smush musical styles from all over the world into one song. I think to capture the sense of overwhelm he could feel while traveling and being bombarded with new sights, sounds, and smells makes me want to get on a plane and see some sights. Also makes me really hungry for Chinese food.
Yeah. And the thing is, I've been listening to this album for almost 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And whilst reading the lyrics, it just hit me that big world is just this guy who's eating and drinking and smoking his way around the world.
Yeah.
Shrimp in Hong Kong, tripping out on shrooms in Bali because it is, as you said, September is mushroom month.
Mm-hmm.
Of course it is. And drinking avocado juice, eating the latest catch in Kyoto before it can be cooked, and the fish is staring at him.
Mm-hmm.
Which reminds me of when your mom went to Benjamin's and she ordered a fish and they brought it out and the middle was all baked, but it still had the head and
That's how they
tail
present it,
attached, and it was looking at her. It was looking at her like, "You're not going to eat me, are you? Come
Well,
on."
that happened when Mike and I went to La Casona in Central Falls. He ordered the fish and they kept the head on it, but he let me have a bite, and that fish was really good. That's just how they serve it in different cultures.
Did you eat the head?
No, I didn't eat the head because I had my own sancocho to eat.
Oh, okay. Anyway, coffee on the Champs-Elysees, baklava in Istanbul, and you wind up smoking a pipe in Casablanca. Hash pipe, maybe.
Yeah.
And you start questioning all you believe in. But he keeps singing how it's a big world with so much to do, and it kind of sounds sarcastic. Plenty of room for me and you. And I think musically, the band conveys like an Asian feel with their playing.
Yeah.
Because as I was looking at like the lyrics, it's like most of the places Joe visits are in Asia, well, except for the Champs-Elysees.
Mm-hmm.
And part of Istanbul, which straddles both Europe and Asia.
Yep.
And I think they convey the exoticness pretty well.
Next track, Precious Time. Boy, did that opening really wake me up.
I bet.
The strumming intensity of the guitar really captures the day-to-day rush that Joe's referring to. He knows there's some stuff he has to change, but when does he have the time? And if he has to waste any of his time on Earth, he'd rather do it spending time with someone who means a lot to him. Best lyric, $1 million never justified a million lies. And also, I dream of you a lover, though a friend would do, which I think speaks to the emotional intimacy people are craving nowadays. Technology gives the illusion of closeness, but in some cases we're more alone than ever. A rocking song about a relatable struggle with great singing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so much going on in the world, everything and everyone moving fast. No one can slow down to really live, which was 86, flash forward 30 years, 8 years later, and it's probably even faster. People would connect if they just had the time, they just had that precious time. And Joe himself is trying to connect, but it seems like at a very minimalist level, he just wants a smile or just a touch, just to waste a little of your precious time, but not his precious time. The band drives this song fast, and it gets across the mood of everyone in a hurry and no one being able to slow down at all.
Next track, Tonight and Forever. The first thing this song makes me think of is high school. Two people who aren't even sure if they like each other at all, and they're keeping what's between them hidden from everyone else, but they're clearly attracted to each other. We know that the relationship won't last because neither party is willing to change for the other, so it's just going to be wham bam thank you ma'am until whatever it is between them fizzles out. It's hormones, plain and simple. Also, shout out to Genius.com for giving the guitar solo a reference in the lyrics because it's so kick-ass it has to be mentioned.
Mm-hmm. To me, this song always seemed like a continuation of Precious Time. Joe's still trying to make that connection, but he realizes, well, it's not like you'd see in the magazine or in the movies. This is real life, and Joe doesn't even know if he likes you, but he wants to be with you tonight and forever. Right? And again, the band is just driving this song fast, and it's over in 2.5 minutes.
Next track, Shanghai Sky.
This would be part 2, side 2.
That opening piano is gorgeous. The song was absolutely beautiful and very soothing. I don't even think the lyrics are needed, although they suit the tone of the music and tell a story of reminiscing on past travels and wishing you could go back. All I'm saying is that if this was an instrumental, I wouldn't have minded at all, but I love this track. Absolutely lovely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it seems like Joe's been all over the world, and so much so that it's gotten small for him. There's nowhere left to go, and it kind of reminded me of Ecclesiastes. There's nothing new under the sun. But when he gets to Shanghai, he notices the color of the sky. It's something he's never seen. And to quote, after the summer rain, children smile, curious and kind, and the world is big again. And it's like just that small moment has opened up the world for him. And the thing is, it's like no one can possibly see and experience every single thing under the sun. So I think there'll always be something new awaiting discovery. And the first 2.5 minutes are instrumental. And to me, it's like they've always evoked that sky. It's like, um, it's kind of like intimate, but it's big at the same time, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then Joe sings for the next 2 minutes. And then the last 40 seconds, it's back to that instrumental that began the song. And yeah, same thing. I mean, I could live with it as being a complete
Yeah.
instrumental. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful.
Next track, $50 Love Affair.
Me
Oh,
love you long time?
huh?
Me love you long time?
I don't know what that's
Is
from.
this, oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, we're getting sultry jazz bass. I'm 99% sure that this is a song about Joe engaging the services of a hooker in France. He's about the town late at night, smelling booze and cheap food, and he's just craving everything, sex most of all. I really like this song because it's about crude appetites and written so poetically, especially the lyrics, the air buzzing with foreign tongues, and referring to drinking as the local poison, but you find yourself swaying to it as if it was a romantic ballad. Well done, sir.
I kind of think he's more being an observer because he sings about sailors on leave looking for uh, female companionship,
Oh,
and I think lyrically he seems to be sarcastically romanticizing it because there's that line, ah, another taste of cheap delight, street food sizzling outside, washed down with the local poison, and to me it's that that clinches the sarcasm, like what a bunch of
maybe this is his version of Jacques Brel's Amsterdam because that has the same vibe.
it could be.
Yeah.
And I think Joe throws in like his Bob Dylan imitation when he sings the line twice, just like any other man. And it's not as noticeable the first time, but the second time it's like, okay, he's got his Bob down.
Yeah.
And to me, the accordion gives the impression of this taking place in Paris. And yes, I'm probably musically stereotyping. Accordion equals French. And I
Yes.
also thought accordion also equals Weird Al.
Correct. Next track, We Can't Live Together. Joe Jackson does the blues. Joe has found someone he's crazy about, and they're crazy about him, but in the long run, they're not compatible. Too many ups and downs. And out of the context of the bedroom, they just really don't know what to do with each other. He's in agony, but not sad, more so frustrated. He's accepted that this is how things happen, but that doesn't mean he has to like it. So he has to vent his feelings in song, and you find yourself nodding along to his agony. But there is a note of sadness with those last notes on the piano, which makes for a fascinating ending.
Mm.
Yeah.
So he starts off singing about arranged marriages and about how those in them didn't have the luxury of running around and being free. And he thinks that might not be a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
He sings about how he and his woman can't live together or live apart. And it's like, well, why do we get caught up in all this stuff? It should just be easier where we get together, we get married, the end. And that's what arranged marriages were. This is who you're going to marry and be with at the end of your life. End of story. What could be easier? And this got me to wondering if my grandparents'
Mm-hmm.
marriage was arranged. And then I asked your mom if she knew if any of her grandparents' marriages were arranged. She thinks one of them might have been on Jaju's side. And I think Ravon Vavou might have. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm going to do some digging to find out.
It's also important to make the distinction that a lot of people get arranged marriages confused with forced marriages. Those two things are not the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because I knew a girl when I was at Rhode Island College who was in the honors program with me, who was Muslim, and she's going to have an arranged marriage from her parents.
Mhm.
But she also talked about how she's definitely told them, this is what I want, and this is what I definitely don't want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so she has some input.
Yes.
And I was wondering, like, is he lamenting that they both have to do what they have to do? First it's too easy, then it's too hard. And the quote, we know when to play the right cards, but we never know what to say. And it's almost like, is this freedom to choose just complicating things?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think you need that because
I agree.
Because if Faru had had his way, I would have married some nurse in Portugal when Uncle Mike and I went out there because he had the whole thing set up, and he was so PO'd when I said, "Nah, didn't look her up, didn't meet her,
Didn't
sorry,
care.
didn't care."
Yep.
This song is in 3/4 time.
Oh, waltz. Okay.
Yep, and the music in the verses is very sparse, but it always explodes on the choruses, though. I think mirroring the frustration in the lines, we can't live together, but we can't live apart.
Next track, 40 Years. This song was written about the 40th anniversary of the end of World War II. Shows how not so long ago it was. I think what makes this song really poignant is remembering the time it was released when there were two Berlins and the Cold War was still raging. And this is a song about peace, love, and understanding that doesn't feel schmaltzy or phoning it in. I think the reason Joe is so sincere is because of the special relationship England has with the US and how Europeans, for the most part, were grateful at the time when America joined the war effort. He's not yearning for a different time because, after all, World War II was absolutely horrible, but I think he's singing as someone who is so tired of all the political bullshit and wants to remind people that there were times where, for a brief moment, it wasn't all doom and gloom and we found happiness with each other. Beautiful song.
Hmm. I wonder if the Cold War was a factor in just separating everyone.
Yeah.
Probably. Anyway, so 40 years, and I thought, oh, geez, Louise, next year it'll be 80 years.
Again, not so long ago in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, but this was 1986. And Joe sings how back in 45, France, England, and the US were allies, but time has passed and these countries just carpet each other. The French are so damn hard to please. No one likes the Americans. And he doesn't say much about England because that's where he's from.
Mm-hmm.
Tack on another 40 years, and it's pretty much the same attitudes. The only difference being now on the world stage is Germany is united.
Mm-hmm.
And the music is mostly piano, and it almost kind of has like a music box feel to it. And it's a sad music box at that.
Next track, Survival.
This will be part 3 or side 3.
Those fast-paced guitar chords accompanied by the drums kicks ass. And it's almost bare bones. It's fleshed out by a bass and Joe singing, but it hits the point home. Only take what you need to survive, because we're not here long. But you could make the counter-argument that if we're not here for a long time, you should buy some stuff you want anyway. And I also think my favorite song about scraping to get by is Life During Wartime by Talking Heads. Given the choice between the two, Talking Heads gets my pick.
Mm-hmm. And then we have the big line, take what you want, but just what you need for survival. I think, I guess you probably have to make sure that what you want and need is the same thing, which usually it isn't. This song has only one verse, and musically it's set apart by just having the rhythm section play during it. Then there's a whole band with that very staccato guitar on the chorus. And I think this is one of the few songs that probably could have come right off of Look Sharp, and it's over and done with in 2 minutes and 19 seconds.
Next track, Soul Kiss. I think this song is about looking for substance in a world devoted to flashy appearances, beautiful women on TV, advertisements for stuff to buy, a dig at some of the pop artists at the time, which with Joe sneering the phrase material girl in a way that makes you laugh for how he's able to cut to the core, and fast food available hot and ready. Yet, in terms of calling out the culture, this doesn't do it for me, even with the laugh I got in the chill vibes.
Yeah, so Joe's the outside observer again, getting teased by what's on TV, and he sings about how it's everything you want but nothing that you need. And the record stores are filled with the pretty boys, Duran Duran, and the material girls. What are we talking about there?
Some blonde lady from Jersey. I don't know.
New York.
Oh, sorry.
Michigan, actually. Michigan, and then we moved to New York.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't know why I thought Jersey.
Madonna, for those of you who are wondering.
Yeah.
Anyway, students vote for actors. Ron. Hippies work for IBM, which I thought was hilarious. And Joe's just looking for a soul kiss, which I have to admit, I had to look up to find out what that was. And it's just another term for French kiss. But I think Joe is actually really looking for something to soothe his soul. Like you said, he's looking for something real, like trying to do away with all the artifice, all the surface. And the playing is pretty funky. And Joe's piano playing kind of remind me a little bit of Donald Fagen from Steely Dan.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. Next track, The Jet Set. This is a call out I love. Joe Jackson calling out all the asshole tourists. You know the ones. The people who take pictures of the residents, yell at the locals to speak English, not interested in trying different foods and only getting McDonald's, and making some not so subtle comments about people's facial structure. Even though it's making fun of them in a brilliant way, it's so on the nose I don't want to listen to it because I want to throttle those assholes and give them a good thump. The kind of people Tony Bourdain would want to disembowel. But in terms of how well it's written, hats off to you, sir. You got it right.
And I think that first line just sets up the whole song. Hey, pal, can I take your picture for the people back home?
Yeah.
And, so it's about the boorish, rude tourists who have a lot of things to see and are just kind of checking them off their list. They get a Big Mac in Japan while $1's worth 1,000 yen. Boy, did I get a deal, let me tell you. these are tourists who are like just passing through. They're not taking time to soak up the culture, the
Mm-hmm.
food, and
Mm-hmm.
so on.
Mm-hmm.
And I gotta say, it reminds me of when your mom and I were in London last year at the British Museum. And the thing was, I just really wanted to see the Rosetta Stone because I'd read about it when I was a kid in history class and just heard about it, and I really wanted to see it. So we get to it, and have you seen it? Did you see it at the museum?
Yeah, and I kid you not, I went up to it and I looked at Tyler and I went, "That's it."
Oh man.
I thought it would be bigger or something, but it's still impressive. But I was just like, "Oh, that's it. You guys really stole that."
So we get there, and it's encased in glass all
Yep.
the way around.
Yep.
And the funny thing is, people are just walking up to it with their phones, taking a picture of it, and walking away.
Mm-hmm.
And me, I'm pissing off people because I'm walking around it, getting really close, and just
Mm-hmm.
really studying it.
Taking it in, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like reading the explanations about, and I'm just stunned that there were people at the time who were able to decipher this. I mean, it just boggles my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, those people who took the pictures, are they really going to look at beyond showing their friends, hey, look what I took a picture of?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just probably taking up space on their phone, and I
What?
bet they're going to delete it.
To be fair, I took a lot of pictures while I was out in London because it's like I don't know when I'm going to be back here again.
Well,
I'm taking
yeah.
pictures.
I mean, my thing is, I figure a lot of this stuff is online, and there are better pictures than I'll ever take. So I figure, it's out there if I need to see it again. Let's see. I know. I think you should just try to be there in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
because, like, when in Rome.
Yeah.
And I mean, your mom and I are going away again, and we got a guidebook, and they have like phrases in Papiamento, one of the official languages for Aruba,
Mm-hmm.
and it's almost kind of close to Portuguese. And I thought, okay, I do know some of these offhand, so
Oh, okay.
I'll give it a shot. And the local food, and I told your mom I really want to try the local stuff because they've got like. Well, the thing is, they've got like steakhouses and all these other restaurants, and I'm thinking,
Nah.
well, we've got steakhouses up here too. I just want to
Exactly.
try
Plus,
something different.
it's an interesting blend of, Aruba is owned by the Dutch.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, I don't know if it's a melting pot or not per se, but there's definitely a blend of a lot of cultures over on that island.
Yeah, there is. There is. As long as I don't have to eat monkey brains. I just think of that scene in Temple of Doom.
Which I haven't seen.
Oh, okay.
Because you guys told me how bad it was.
It pretty much is. Yeah, so Joe sings it all so sarcastically. And the music, to me, kind of has like a spy movie feel to it with a twangy guitar. And I thought, well, those James Bond types were always globetrotting. But Bond always seemed to know how to fit in with the local culture.
Yeah, he did. He did his research.
He did. Good for him. He was a spy. He did his homework. Unlike Archer, he gets the briefs and just throws them out.
Oh, great. Next track, Tango Atlantico. I really love how Joe leaned into the drama of the tango for this track. I could just listen to the music by itself. One commenter on YouTube said this is about the struggling alliance between the US and Europe during the Cold War and how they really couldn't agree on anything, which I see. But in my opinion, the song had a really strong opening and then it kind of petered out from there.
Mm-hmm. I think the title Tango Atlantico comes from Tango Argentino.
Yes.
Which was on Broadway at the time that Big World was made.
Mm-hmm.
And it said something about like it just like broke all these Broadway rules. It only had like a really spare set and not amateurs, but like no one really knew who the
dancers were.
Yeah,
because they're so in the dance world.
Yeah. So I don't know. I kind of thought it was more like about Joe singing about World War II. Like he sings about the British soldier during Christmas and it's raining and he wants to be anywhere but where he is, and he thinks about his kids in English Bear. And then I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, jump in here.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's singing about Eisenhower and Churchill, casting them as a dancing couple. Churchill's flashing his V signs and smoking cigars while Ike is polishing his medals.
That's interesting because some people had the theory that the U.S. was the guy smoking the cigars and that Europe was the lady. Like we're trying to court her in the name of an alliance to get more money. But I could see why that would be Eisenhower and Churchill.
Okay, all right.
People have different interpretations.
Yeah, that's mine. And Joe cautions us. It's the right interpretation, by the way. And Joe cautions us, and you think this song comes too late, but lest we forget, this Tango Atlantico isn't over yet. So let me ask you, the poli-sci major. At this point in the world, are the U.S. and Britain still vying for the number one position in the world, or that's pretty much just over?
1986?
No, as now 2024.
Oh, is now 2024 vying for the position in the world? Well, I remember last we talked about how the US is definitely trying to be the hegemon and the hegemony, but political scientists are theorizing that if it was to become a duopoly with two major world powers, it would be the US and China, but China's not necessarily at that point yet.
They're getting close, though.
Yeah, and as Professor Wiener said, uh, England is entering the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, and he says for everything they've done, they deserve it.
Really?
Yeah.
How does he think it's going to go?
I mean, just a burning mess. I mean, the thing that really jump-started it was Brexit, and then the Conservatives kept fumbling it over and over and over. And then, Liz Truss not lasting, more than a month after the Queen died, and then Rishi Sunak came in there and he called that snap election and all the Tories lost. It's like, I remember Graham Norton gave an interview with Stephen Colbert when he was over in the US promoting his book. And Boris Johnson had just been elected Prime Minister at the time, and he said, I think we in England looked at everything, your little situation over in the US, and said, oh, America's going through this all by themselves. Why don't we have a crisis? That way they feel less alone. But yeah, I don't think England is looking to be, I think they definitely wish they were still a world power, but in terms of which prominent Western countries could still be considered a world power, I think England is kind of fizzling out. Also because especially John Oliver did a series about NATO, and he said, so if there was a country that was to be in charge in Europe, which one would it be? And the first answer was Germany, but nobody wants a German world power ever again for obvious reasons. So, yeah, but to answer your question, no, I don't think England and the US are in the duopoly contentious race anymore.
And the thing about this song, yes, it is a tango, and yes, it's very dramatic.
Yes. Next track, Hometown. Okay, I don't know if you ever saw this episode, but this reminds me of the Twilight Zone episode where a guy travels back in time to his hometown when he was a kid, and he learns he can't go back to how things were before.
That sounds familiar. I don't think I saw it, though, but it does sound very familiar.
It's very well done. Joe is feeling the same way, in a rush to grow up and kind of wandering aimlessly. He wants to go back to his hometown, but he doesn't think it'll be the same. And he's right. A poignant song, but I think Rod Serling was better able to express the same message with greater effect on an audience.
Mm-hmm. Joe said this was a deliberate excuse to write a nostalgic song. In this case, he was looking back at growing up in Portsmouth, and he sings about how, like, no matter where you go, you never leave the past behind. It's like that thing, you can take so-and-so out of whatever town they grew up in, but you can't take the town out of the person. And he wants to go back, even though it'll never be the same, and he wonders if it's even still there. Per Wikipedia, Portsmouth still is. It's the only English city not primarily located on the mainland. And it's 74 miles southwest of London. And I have to say, as someone who never really left his hometown, but except for 1 year, I've seen the changes over the decades. And yeah, you can't go back. You have to go forward, kicking and screaming all the way. The music is soft rock, and I think it relays Joe's wishing and possible loneliness very well. And get this, I think I sent this to you, someone noted that the chord structure is identical to Pachelbel's Canon in D.
I'd have to listen to it again.
But at a faster tempo, and I listened to both, and it is.
Okay. Final track, Man in the Street. Okay, I didn't have too much to say about this song because I was kind of sick when I was listening to it. So what I have is, this song can be summed up as everyone has an opinion on everybody else, and nobody really knows what's going on behind closed doors. And to be honest, the song did nothing for me.
Okay. Yeah, that pretty much sums it up pretty well. Like, Joe's not a happy guy, but he's not always sad. He's not rich, but he's not doing too bad. He's kind of like in the middle. Like, he's the average man on the street. And then he sings, no matter who you think you are, there's always someone with a different view. There's always someone who thinks he's got a right to say what's good for you. That was 1986. Flash forward 38 years later to 2024, and you cannot escape anyone's opinion, no matter how hard you try. Thanks to social media, which I'm not on any of those platforms. But I do get it secondhand thanks to you and other people.
I'm your social media carrier pigeon.
I appreciate that. And now here's the thing. Every voice is heard, Though I think if you just shouldn't be, it's basically like some people just need to shut up. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
that's me. You know, the morons. But
The common clay of the West.
it's I guess it's free speech and we're paying the price for this free speech and that's the way it goes, I guess. And I think the man in the street was probably a lot smarter when this song first came out
Yeah.
because there were, how do I put this, less avenues of information to go down.
Mm-hmm.
And it was probably a lot easier to figure out, well, which is accurate, which isn't. And now it's just, there's just so many false paths you can take these days.
Oh, yeah.
And this is the only song on the album that fades out.
Overall, I like Joe Jackson a lot better than I thought I would.
Yeah, me too. I was surprised.
Yeah, I knew him mostly from his compositions for. I'm surprised you didn't mention this as a reference to Mom.
The White Cat.
Yeah, the White Cat.
Okay, there, dear. I mentioned the White Cat.
I'll mention the White Cat a little bit more. So, for those who don't remember, the audiobook company for kids, Rabbit Ears, did a lot of recordings of fairy tales and folk stories from all over the world and got a lot of famous people to read them. And The White Cat was narrated by Emma Thompson, and Joe Jackson wrote the score. And the music for that is gorgeous. You can find it on internetarchives.org, the whole audiobook if you don't have the original tape on cassette. It's beautiful. And listening to this album, I understood why they picked him to write the score because, the man was very eclectic and he just followed where his passion led him, and I can see him writing that music now that I've listened to this. Anyway, I really think he's a very talented musician. Not all of his songs will resonate, but when they do, what beautiful music accompanies it. So give this album a try. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Mm-hmm. So after Big World came out, it seemed that Joe was starting to turn into a cult artist through no doings of his own, I guess.
Maybe it's just the critics.
Could be,
Yeah.
or maybe the fan base who maybe was just a little tired of, no, just stick with something for at least 2 or 3 albums.
Mm-hmm.
But he's still able to record and put out albums, but the audience was just getting smaller. And to me, this is a really solid album. I don't play it a lot, but I'm glad I have it. And if you'd like more Joe Jackson, I highly recommend his debut Look Sharp. And Night and Day is also a must-have.
Mm-hmm.
He also put out Night and Day Part 2, which I have not gotten around to listening to yet. But again, the sequel, is it as good as the original? And if we ever do Night and Day, we'll go into how he lived in New York and then just had to leave New York behind for very interesting reasons. If you want a good overview of Joe Jackson's A&M years, there's a 2-disc best of that's, of course, only available as an import called This Is It. It's done in chronological order. You get some live stuff, you get some B-sides, and you get most of the famous songs.
All right, as always, thank you for listening to Listen Still When My Dad Listens to This. Remember, like, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz. The more you interact with the video, the greater chance we have of appearing on the YouTube homepage. If you follow me on social media, I post the episodes there. If you're friends with my dad, tell him what you want to listen to, and he can email it right to your inbox. As always, thank you for listening to Listen Still When My Dad Listens to This. We will be back next time with another album to nitpick and gripe about. Dad, anything you want to say before we sign off?
It's a small world after all. Or is it the big one? Maybe it's medium-sized. Maybe it's a world after all.